Welcome back. This is Business Insight. I told you about focus. Tonight is on the housing industry. Guess who is joining me in the house? We have George Wachiuri, CEO Optiven Group. And thank you very much, Wachiuri, for joining us here.
Thank you.
And next to Wachiuri, we have Wacu Mbugua. She is a research assistant at Cytonn. Thank you very much, Wacu, for joining us. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah,
Wacu.
It's actually Wacu.
Wacu.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
First of all, I want to hear from you, from the research that you have done. Tell me this, when you look at the government plans to provide 1 million units for Kenyans, do you think this is a valid dream?
Yeah, I would say it is valid.
Mm-hmm.
The only challenge is that the government has promised to deliver these units by 2022. Already we are past 1 year into 2022.
Yeah.
And so the thing would be, with the time remaining, is it actually possible to deliver these 1 million units? I don't think that's possible, considering that in the past 1 year, we haven't seen any units being delivered to the market. So while the dream is valid, maybe it needs more time.
The timeline is invalid.
Yeah.
The dream is valid, the time frame is invalid.
Yes.
Hold it on there, I'll be coming back to you. Do you believe so? Or do you think her argument is invalid?
I think it's good to dream. And of course, as a government, they need to dream so that you also dream. But I remember that the 1 million was very ambitious, and I remember the government revised the figures to 500,000. Now they're talking about developing 500,000 affordable housing, of course, social housing, and some of them to be part of the mortgage.
Yeah.
So I think it was a very good dream, and I'm happy that the current CS is working so hard. I was expecting to find him here. And but more need to be done.
What is more?
They need to run more, to partner with the private sector, like people like Optiven. They need to think about the funding. Already the funding have got some challenges.
Yeah.
They also need to think of enticing international developers to ensure that our people who are in the informal sector, they're able to get some of this housing, because housing is a basic need.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to see that the government is looking at more of social housing, whereby people are earning between 1 shilling and 15,000. And then, of course, low-cost housing, people earning 15,000 to about 50,000.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people earning 50 to 100, they can be able to get a mortgage, so the mortgage gap. So I think it's a good thing, and we support the government, but it's a long toll. It's a tall order.
I fear the bad.
Yeah.
Tell me this. What would it take you to erase the bat in the sentence?
We need to see a bit of a focus, especially on the government activities, because the vision is good, but there's a lot of other noises. You know, we are talking about corruption issues. There are a lot of talk within the government, so they lose the focus. And once they lose the focus, definitely the vision, the dream that is very good for common Wanjiku, the common Kenyan, might delay.
Might delay.
Yes.
I want to hear from you. I mean, I know that you have done a bit of research, on this topic. You see, the Vision 2030 talks about providing about 200,000 units, for Kenyans. That was the aspiration of Vision 2030. And so that adds up to 1 million units, every 5 years. The government has diluted this to 500,000.
Yes.
When you look at the demand vis-a-vis the supply, aren't we staring at a bigger crisis in the future?
The supply right now currently is mostly geared towards the mid-end and the high-end segments of the market.
Yeah.
So that's why we're saying each year the demand for, especially for affordable housing, is growing by 200,000 units per year. So if they were to provide 200,000 units per year, I think that would sort of address the shortage in a visible manner. Yeah.
What is the understanding of affordable?
Affordable is it's a relative term. So
The government talks about affordable
yeah,
houses.
but in the affordable
Affordable
housing sense that we're talking of, affordable housing is any house that is affordable to a median income kind of person.
Then who is that?
In Kenya, the median income is about 50,000 shillings.
50,000.
Yes, and with the recommended allocation to housing per month, the UN recommends 30% of your monthly income to go to housing, and not more than that. Maybe maximum of 40%.
Yeah.
So if this 50,000 person can afford a house at 30% of his income, that is about 15,000 shillings,
Yeah.
then that is affordable housing to him.
But now, you're throwing a spanner into the whole work, because we know for sure that Kenyans spend about 60% of their income on food.
Yeah.
So they are left with 40% to pay their bills, transport as well, and to take care of any emergencies. So who actually then qualifies for these affordable units?
With the government's planning is that these people will be able to buy these houses in a comfortable manner. So this person is earning 50,000, but they still have to spend on food and school fees and all that.
Yeah.
But you also have to pay for housing.
So how
in a
do you pay?
comfortable environment, this person should be paying 15,000 per month for a house. So whether this is rent or mortgage payments, the affordable housing dream is to make sure that that person spends 15,000 and not more without a struggle.
Wachiuri,
I think the government had a good idea, because we were saying that since most of the money goes to food, they were talking about affordability of food. That's why we're talking about putting about 700,000 acres either with maize, rice, or potatoes.
and that flopped.
And we won't say it is flopped. The vision is still there. It's
Well,
part
the
of
vision is still there.
It's part of the big four.
The vision is still there.
Yeah, it
the
is still-
project
yeah.
stalled.
We won't say it's stored. Because
That's what we would
they
say,
still have 2
because
years.
it did. Eh?
But initially that was a concept.
Yeah.
Make food affordable, make the health services affordable. Currently, about 36% of Kenyan people can access the health services.
Yeah.
But they're saying by the year 2020, at least 100%.
Through
So
the
that-
universal health care
Exactly.
coverage.
So by the time they come now to housing, you have some money to save to be able to pay for this particular house, the same money you pay rent. That's what they were talking about, mortgage refinancing. And they wanted to extend the mortgage to 20 years. Currently, you get a mortgage with only 10 years.
Yeah.
And 10 years means that you are paying a lot of money. So I think the vision was to lengthen the years of mortgages. And you have countries who give mortgages 30, 50 years, like Japan, they give 50. So that when George Wachiuri pays the mortgage today, my son David can also continue paying, and maybe my grandson. So it was a good package. And I think for us in private sector, we should not condemn the government. We should support them. I'm a member of Kenya Private Sector Alliance. We should be able to contribute, because at the end of the day, people who are looking for these affordable houses, it's our relatives who cannot be able to afford a good mortgage. And I'm happy that they had a very good plan whereby they're talking about social housing. Ni nyumba inajengwa in one line, and another one, that a commoner can be able to afford these particular houses. So let's not kill the dream now, but we can encourage.
We actually encourage people to dream, and the government actually to dream bigger.
Yes.
What we are doing here is to relook at the dream and ask ourselves, how do we dream better? And is our dream still valid? I want to hear from you, Wachiuri, still. Do you think the government should be in the business of constructing houses?
I think the government has no business in construction of houses. The government should be able to make the environment friendly for people like Optiven to do the construction. Because for us,
how do they make it friendly?
they can be able to say, okay, instead of you developing infrastructure, for example, they can develop infrastructure. They can look at the taxes in Kenya, especially for local developers. And then they harmonize these taxes between national government and the county government. Right now, Brian, people who are working in the counties, we are facing it, because you pay taxes to the national government, you also pay other taxes in the county. And even if you want to produce that affordable house at a 2 million shillings, you can't, because a lorry of maram, you saw the other day in one of the counties, 3,300 one lorry. Maybe for you to do a project, you need 5,000 lorries of ballast. So you find that the taxes are inhibiting people. Of course, the cost of land. they now become expensive because local developers are developing this infrastructure, which is the work of government. And I'm happy that initially they said that if you develop 400 houses, they reduce the corporate tax.
Yeah.
I don't know how possible, how many local developers can do 400 houses. They could have said, if you do 100, you get some tax rebate.
Yeah.
That's the only government can do to harmonize the environment for people like Optiven to be able to help the government to develop these houses. And you can do it. We have what it takes because we have been there for 20 years. So that's something that I would urge the government.
Yeah.
Relook at the private sector, partner with the private sector, listen to them, because once we listen to them,
Yeah.
we can be able to come together and develop this 500,000. 500,000 is a drop in the ocean. It's nothing. We are requiring 200,000 every year, and 67% of our people are in the informal sector. Wanataka manyumba. Sasa hii 500, hii ni kama example.
And I mean, to spice up, your argument, 60% of Kenyans who live in urban areas, they live in slums.
That's it.
So we are talking about out of 10 people, 6 of them, they live in slums.
We have a job to do, man.
That is a huge, Herculean task ahead of us. But I want to hear from you. Look, the government has some sort of a confidence crisis with how the public funds, has been managed in the past. And when we know the issues, surrounding the National Social Security Fund, how the fund has been managed in the past, there are so many question marks. How the National National Health Insurance Fund is being managed. We still have people in court, facing charges of embezzling fund and mismanagement. Tell me this: do you see Kenyans trusting the government with the housing fund? And what needs to be done, actually?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's that issue of the government mishandling funds or any type of entity they have. And because of this, Kenyans tend to not trust most of these government plans that they'll come to fruition. So with the National Housing Development Fund, it's the same case. So I would say, I think the better assurance that the fund will be successful is to give an upper hand to the private sector, because definitely the private sector will handle its funds that they need to develop, and that's where their profits lie and their returns. So there wouldn't be I would highly doubt they would mismanage the funds. So I think that's one of the things that the government can do to give the upper hand to the private sector.
Very well.
In addition to maybe providing them with land, because we know the government holds a lot of land, even in Nairobi and all over Kenya actually. So if the government could give the private sector the upper hand, provide them with the services they need, the infrastructure they need, the funds they need, then definitely this project is going to be successful. But that's one of the things now, that's the key issue, the partnership between the public sector and the private sector.
Very good. When we come back, I'll be seeking to find out from you, are there countries that we can learn or we can draw some lessons from? If yes, which countries are these? What is your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is George Optiven.
George Optiven?
Yes.
Wow, interesting. Are you on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook, yes. George Wachiuri, that's my Facebook page.
That is your Facebook
and,
page.
Of course, our viewers, they can also tag Optiven Limited.
What is your Twitter handle?
Unfortunately, mine isn't active, but for any questions... Your
Twitter handle is inactive?
Yes, unfortunately. Wow. But for any questions at Cytonn Investments, both on Twitter and Facebook, and also on Instagram, the questions will be answered.
My Twitter is active. It's O'Brien Kimani, at O'Brien Kimani. We would want to hear your views and, of course, questions in regard to the debate that we're having tonight. But for now, we got some bills to pay. We're taking a short break, and thereafter, we are back. Stay right here. Welcome back. The address is KBC Channel 1. The program is Business Insight. My name is O'Brien Kimani. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, at George Optiven.
Yes.
And you said at?
Cytonn Investment.
At Cytonn Investment. Those are channels that you can use to reach to us. Tonight we're discussing housing Kenyans, the Herculean task ahead, and how best it can be handled. Before we went for the break, there are lessons that we can draw from our neighbors, especially Morocco. Morocco is one of few African countries that you don't get to see slums because they embraced social housing about 10 years ago. And the role of the government was to facilitate the private sector, by providing the necessary infrastructure, like roads, sewer, power, and so forth, and then invite the private sector to come and construct houses. Do you think this is a model that probably maybe we can pursue as a country as well?
I think it's a good model because even before you go too far, I had a visit in Rwanda.
Kigali.
We were planning to do some real estate there, investments. And I was amazed that what this government is able to move people from the villages and allocate them in different pieces of land. And then they plan for that particular land. When Optiven is going to buy this particular land, the sewer is already planned. The roads are already planned. So you're not going there to plan the way you do in Kenya, whereby you go and plan your own land. And we can be able to borrow lessons from those kind of countries. And I think that is what the Ministry of Infrastructure, could have looked at, whereby they partner with private sector and then knock this, give Kenyans a solution. Maybe that's the way to go.
Maybe that's the way to go. What is your take on this?
I think we can borrow from those successful countries, definitely. We have countries like Singapore. It has also successfully managed to address its housing shortage. And the government, the governments in this country, the major difference they make is that they manage to provide financing for these projects, both for the developers and also for the home buyers. So for example, in the Western countries and also in countries like Singapore and Morocco, the mortgage interest rates are quite low. So this means that the buyers are able to get mortgages and at low interest rates, which are affordable. And to the developers, the cost of capital is also relatively low compared to Kenya, where it's about 14%. So in these countries, you find that it's probably less than 10%. So for developers, they're able to also afford that financing. And real estate is generally a highly capital intensive. So developers definitely need that financing.
Earlier on, you're talking about, the lifespan of mortgages in this country. And currently, we don't have any mortgage that's more than 20 years in this country. And when you look at the cost of mortgage in this country, it's also another elephant in the room. No wonder we have less than 15,000 mortgage accounts in this country. What do you think, what incentives do you think the government should offer, in order to increase their appetite?
I think they had an idea of coming up with the Kenya refinancing mortgage financing company, whereby they are able to persuade the financial institutions, which are not easy to persuade, so that they can extend the length of the mortgages. But the question is, which guarantee will the government give when George buys the house and I default? Maybe those are issues that they need to give to assure the owners of money. And something else that really affected the uptake of mortgages is the capping of interest rates. Because nowadays, the banks don't need to give Wachiuri money. They only need to buy bonds
and bills,
treasury bills, and they're comfortable. There's no risk. And that's why you find that, this one has affected developers and other entrepreneurs. And it's something that maybe, I know the central bank is thinking about it, to remove that capping, because some of us who are doing entrepreneurship, we don't care how much interest you are getting the money from, as long as you get the money and you transact business. So it's something
So in your own opinion, the capping of interest rate is also somehow killing the housing dream?
It was a disaster.
And I can see you're nodding.
Yes.
Are you doing so in agreement?
Yes, definitely. Because the capping of the interest rates, so lending institutions holding back from lending to private sectors. So developers have had their access to finance curtailed. So one of the things that the government needs to do is definitely introduce alternative sources of finance. We don't have to depend on banks and the formal lending institutions. So we've seen the National Housing Development Fund. So the government needs to come up with more non-banking financing solutions.
Good. So in your own opinion, one of the hurdles that we need to deal with is the interest capping law.
We need to deal with that. And it has many repercussions, not only in housing. Look at the job creation in Kenya today. We have many people, young people without jobs. because SMEs cannot expand, developers cannot expand, because yes, you have a good idea, but you have no access to this particular money to develop. And that's why that there's a lot of foreign money coming, big companies coming to Kenya. If you see these big houses coming up in Lavington, in Kileleshwa, go and ask who are the owners, who are people building these houses. These are people from Egypt. Yeah. These are people from China. But what happens to the local developer? So I think the government needs to look at building the local people, because these local people understand the local economy. Otherwise, we might mortgage our nation, and then by 2022, we are foreigners in our nation.
Tell me this. I mean, we have the National Housing Corporation in this country, and it has been there since the 1960s. What is the role of National Housing Corporation in the whole matrix?
Ideally, the National Housing Corporation should be the one spearheading actually the housing sector,
exactly.
the whole housing sector.
In the public sector?
Yes. In Kenya, it's been barely successful, although it has had projects, those built in 1990s and the early 2000s, such as the Nyayo High Rise, So, but compared to those other countries, just here in Tanzania, the National Housing Corporation has managed to build a lot of projects and it's still active. If you look at the National Housing Corporation in Kenya, it's not as active compared to these other countries.
Less than 2,000 units per year.
And maybe.
And actually, I mean, aren't we failing on this? Why can't we empower the National Housing Corporation? They have the wealth of experience.
A lot of experience.
I mean, they have been in the market for more than 50 years. Why can't we reorganize it and then fund it properly, to carry out this mandate?
I think there are issues of accountability. So, as Kenyan people, let's not do the blame game. People who are given responsibility to run these institutions, they must be accountable, because once they're accountable, maybe even the government would shy off pouring more money to this fund, and they have to deliver. Of course, they have been trying to deliver, but there's a lot of mismanagement. Yeah. And of course, everybody shy away from people who are mismanaging money. So I think it's a call for all Kenyans that we must be accountable with the resources that we do have. Yeah.
The resources that we do have. Very good. Tell me this. Let's look at the issue of affordability of building materials. That is also another elephant in the room.
Yeah, okay.
Tell me this. By what margin do building materials, contribute to the construction of a house?
In Kenya, the average construction cost per square meter is about 44,000 to 60,000 per square meter.
44,000.
Yeah, depending on the quality of the house. So generally, this is about 70% of the total development cost. Yeah, so even if the developer is willing to provide affordable housing, for example, take the 60,000 per square meter and take a three affordable bedroom house, which is about 60 square meters as proposed by the government. So 60 times 60,000, that is already 3.6 million for construction cost. So for the developer to make returns on this,
it needs exclusive of land cost.
Yeah, exclusive of land cost. So for developer to make returns on this house, it probably go for 5 million and above. And the affordable housing solution in Kenya, ideally, it should be between 600,000 and 3 million. That's what they're saying. That's what is affordable. Yeah, so construction cost is one of the key challenges that is facing the developers.
How do we address it, honestly?
There is the solution of using alternative building materials such as expanding polystyrene and prefabs. Yeah, so this has been shown to reduce both construction time and by almost 50%, and also definitely on the materials cost. Yeah.
Let's talk about. Let me ask you this question, because you're already in the ring and you're and you're already receiving the box, the knocks.
Yes.
Why aren't the private sector, why is it that they are yet to embrace alternative form of construction in this country?
Let me say that, like for our case, we have tried affordable housing, affordable alternative construction materials. We have tried the EPS, expanded polystyrene technology. We have tried hollow blocks. We have tried the slabs, and we have even built show houses for these particular houses. But I will urge our viewers and our Kenyan people to accommodate these alternative building technologies. Some years back, we were discussing with the government to build or to allow the building code to change to allow the alternative building materials, which some of them they did. But as a Kenyan people, we need to agree that you can live in a house of hollow blocks. We did one, and Kenyans were coming. They were knocking it.
Yeah.
Waone kama itaanguka. So we have to change our mindset so that we are able to accept. Because the stone that we use is not going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Look at Thika. We are destroying our environment because we are digging these stones. They are not sustainable. So we need to say for sure we have to change. Come to the things of the sewer system, for example.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have water to waste. To go to the sewer system. We can use biodigester to recycle that water and then use it for greening. So Kenyan people must accommodate new ways of doing things. And for us as developers, we are trying to educate them through this kind of forums. And once you do that, you can find that the target of having houses of costing 800 or 1 million is achievable if you accept these alternative building technologies. But we are not giving up as developers. We shall continue testing in the market until the time people accept. Look at countries like Singapore or Malaysia or Asia. They are able to use very affordable materials and they can go up. But Kenya, we have been colonized. We have remained colonized. We want to see the real stone. And I urge the viewers, let's change our mindset so that we are able to accommodate this kind of technology.
Very well. Tell me this. I mean, you are doing some mathematics here, and you are looking at a 3-bedroomed house, going at a cost, in the market about 5 to 6 million shillings. If developers, were to embrace innovation and alternative building materials, this would come down by what margin?
Maybe about 10%.
About 10%.
But the key point is that the construction time drops by probably about 50%.
50%.
And
50% construction time.
Yeah.
And so this means that you save on
you save
labor.
on time and also on labor costs, because the longer the period you take to construct a project, the more money you incur. So if you
and also on the cost of putting up that house, you save, you reduce it by 10%.
About 10%.
10%. So if we are talking about the same unit, let's say 6 million shillings, so it means that your construction cost will come down by about 600,000 shillings.
Yeah, and you can deliver in probably a month or just
in
a
a
few
month.
days. Yeah, that's
so there is a possibility that this unit can come down from about 6 million shillings to about 4.5 to 4.7 million shillings.
In fact, there's some technologies like EPS, you can even go down up to 30%.
30%.
Because as she is saying, you can be able to set up that home within 30 days. So you cut off the entire labor cost.
Yeah.
So yes,
it is very possible.
it's possible, yes.
So the question is this: what is the role of government in ensuring that Kenyans embrace alternative building technology?
I guess the key issue with using alternative building technologies in Kenya is that mindset, as Wachiuri said, that Kenyans believe that their perfect dream home is made of stone.
It's made of stone.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a brick and mortar. But so the government has to contribute in sensitizing the public that actually alternative building technologies are just as good and just as durable, because there is no problem. Developers and the government don't have a problem with using alternative building technologies. The key issue is the home buyer. Acceptance by the home buyers.
Tell me this, between a person who is sleeping in a stone-walled house and you're calling them
Polystyrene.
Polystyrene.
Yeah.
that one,
Yes, EPS,
who is
Yes.
more safer?
They're actually both safe. Just,
All of them are safe.
similarly. Yeah.
So the issue is about is
perception.
Yeah,
Perception.
changing the
Perception,
perception in the
perception.
market. Yeah.
So what then do we need to do to tell our people, look here, this house is as good as a stone house?
Actually, it's what you're doing here, and they are watching us. They can come and see what we have done using affordable materials, and then they can test. And I'm happy that when you did one of them, about 20% accepted. 80% say, no, me, I want Dalugo stone.
80%.
But we need to keep now advocating through these kind of forums to tell Kenyans that you can be able to have a house cheaper by 30%, but not necessarily the Dalugo stone.
Darugo stone.
Yes.
Because we have to wind up. Tell me this. So we have a crisis here, that has been boiling over years. 60% of urban dwellers, they live in our slums. How do we redeem this situation? I'll start with you.
I think I would say the major factors that would contribute to making the affordable housing a success or not is how the government engages the private sector, who hold a lot of power in making this dream possible. So I would say the government needs to make or introduce policies and make sure that the partnership between the public sector and the private sector is feasible, especially for the private sector who care a lot about their returns. But then with the current policies that we have in Kenya, they tend to be vague, and thus they are unwilling to enter into partnerships with the government. But if this was changed, I think we would have already seen maybe units already delivered into the market by now.
Into the market.
Yeah.
Wachira,
I'm thinking that,
are you ready and willing to work with the government, to partner with the government?
we are ready and willing to work with the government, and we must, of course, be grateful for the security that we are enjoying right now, because every person requires this kind of security, and we are happy with the handshake. We are able to operate without worries. But reducing the informal sector or people who are looking for houses, we must agree as Kenyan people. Let's create opportunities in the counties. There are 47 governments. So that to reduce this 500,000 people coming to the city of Nairobi, they can be able to find the jobs wherever they are. Number two, as Kenyan people, let's agree not to live only here in Kileleshwa. Let's agree to travel to Athi River, to Kitengela, to Machakos, whereby you can be able to have your own home and live there. And that's what we do at Optiven. We tell people that we can be able to develop for you a service land and then give you house design, and incrementally you keep developing this type of houses. So we must agree to move out of town.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy that with the new technology, you can work from home. Instead of all of us coming near the CBD, and there's a traffic all the time, because we are all here, millions of people. And once we do that, we are able to ensure that our people are getting houses. And then for people occupying the slums, for example, there was this program for government whereby they're putting up houses for them. But they refused. They were fighting the project. So we need to accept that time will come that we have to do away with Madari, with Kibera, and then we use that particular land. We go up. I'm happy that the government is developing apartments in Gara. They are going 35 floors. You can imagine how many people are going to be accommodated.
Very well.
Look at Kibera, for example. We can be able to utilize that land, and all these people in the slums, they can live up in the sky.
Good. As we wind up, I also want to hear from you. I mean, the private sector is also facing its own confidence crisis, and we know for sure that a number of real estate companies, are going through some serious, they are in what we call financial straitjacket. How then are we going to partner with the government when we also, as private sector, facing some challenges?
Let me say that as an entrepreneur, as business, across the sectors, there's no sector that doesn't encounter challenges. They say that when you encounter challenges, you become wiser. And look at every sector. Tourism, they're facing challenges. Look at real estate, we're also facing our own challenges. Look at government, they are facing crises. But out of those crises, we learn lessons to be better tomorrow. So I think we need to learn from the current challenges, improve our systems, improve our governance, and then we can be able to move our Kenyan people from one level to the next.
Very good.
Yes.
What are your final remarks to the government as a researcher?
As a researcher, I would say that the government really needs to adhere to listen to the private sector and their needs. The private sector is definitely very willing to go into the affordable housing program, but like you find the cost of land in Nairobi and its environs is relatively high. But where land is affordable, there is no infrastructure. So maybe the government can go ahead and improve infrastructure in these areas that are away from Nairobi, and maybe the private sector will be able to relocate their affordable housing projects to those areas.
Good.
Yeah, and also maybe also improve the mortgage market definitely, so that they can be able to encourage buy-ins from the home buyers. Yeah.
I'm about to lock the door. Do you want to say something finally?
I think, let me address the Kenyan people that regardless of all the challenges that we are facing as a nation, Kenya is a beautiful country. I've traveled across the world.
You can say that again.
And Kenya you know, they say east or west, Kenya is fantastic. And regardless of what we are undergoing, we can be able to be creative, to think different, to make this nation a beautiful nation, a nation that our young people can get jobs. And the people to do it, don't point a finger. These fingers are pointing at you. It has to start with George Wachiuri here, with Optiven, with you. We can be able to make this nation a beautiful nation, and we thank God. Purposely for peace, we are enjoying peace now. I can go to Eldoret, I can go to Mombasa to do business there, I can do business in Nairobi. So let's take care of this beautiful girl called Kenya.
In short, we can turn our misfortunes into fortunes.
Exactly.
Thank you so very much indeed for your input this evening. We look forward to for more engagement in the future. Otherwise, thank you very much and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.